Have you ever thought about where Dementors in Harry Potter really came from? What if these terrifying creatures were more than just mindless servants of darkness? In today's video, you'll discover the chilling origins of Dementors, their terrifying power, and their true allegiances. Dementors are among the most nightmarish beings in the wizarding world. Even Death Eaters and Voldemort himself don't inspire the same primal fear as these floating spectres. They drain all happiness from the air, leaving only despair. Strangely enough, they weren't always on the side of darkness. In fact, for most of their history they served the Ministry of Magic. But how could creatures this sinister ever be trusted by the forces of good? And why did wizards allow them to exist at all? Their origins are shrouded in mystery. The first known reference to Dementors dates back centuries, linked to the dark wizard Residian. He lived in a secluded castle near a wizarding village and used Dementors as his personal guards. But when the village refused his request to marry one of their own, he unleashed these monstrous creatures upon them. It was only through the Patronus charm that the villagers managed to drive them away. Centuries later, in the 15th century, Dementors appeared again, this time tied to the infamous island fortress of Azkaban. No one knows who built it, but by that time it was home to another dark wizard, Ekrizdis. He lured lost sailors to his island and tortured them for his own twisted amusement. Dementors thrived there, feeding on the victims' endless suffering. When Ekrizdis finally died, the ministry discovered the fortress overrun with Dementors, stronger than ever. Destroying Azkaban was too dangerous. They feared the Dementors' revenge, so they simply left it untouched. How exactly Dementors reproduce remains a mystery. J.K. Rowling herself has offered conflicting explanations. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, she mentioned that Dementors multiply in misty weather. However, in an interview, she stated that they don't reproduce at all, but rather grow like fungi in places full of decay and despair. In the 17th century, Minister of Magic Damocles Roll saw an opportunity. Instead of fighting Dementors, he turned them into prison guards. Azkaban became the most feared wizarding prison, guarded by creatures that thrived on human suffering. Over the years, Dementors weren't just used for Azkaban, they were deployed to protect key locations, escort criminals, and even hunt down fugitives. The ministry saw them as useful tools, rewarding them with the one thing they craved: human emotions. For decades, Dementors remained loyal to the ministry, but when Voldemort returned, everything changed. He promised them something the ministry never could: absolute freedom. No more restrictions, no more control. They could feast on human souls without limits. And so Dementors revolted, abandoned Azkaban, and swore allegiance to the Dark Lord. This betrayal allowed the escape of countless Death Eaters, and once Voldemort's influence reached the ministry, Dementors grew more ruthless, administering the dreaded Dementor's kiss far more often. Only after Voldemort's final defeat were Dementors permanently banished from Azkaban. The ministry replaced them with Aurors, ensuring that these soulless creatures would never hold power again. Dementors are nearly unstoppable. They consume every positive emotion, forcing their victims to relive their worst memories. Just being near them plunges people into darkness. When Dementors infest an area, despair follows. Their most feared attack, the Dementor's kiss, strips a person of their very soul, leaving behind only a lifeless shell. And the most terrifying truth? There is no known way to destroy them. Wizards can repel them with a Patronus, but complete eradication seems impossible. These creatures remain one of the greatest horrors of the Harry Potter universe, terrifying, relentless, and perhaps truly immortal. Have you ever wondered what happened to the Dementors after the Second Wizarding War? What if they weren't truly gone, but merely waiting in the shadows, biding their time? In today's video, you'll uncover the dark fate of the Dementors, their lingering presence in the wizarding world, and the terrifying possibility of their return. Even after their banishment from Azkaban, Dementors didn't simply disappear. The Ministry of Magic made an official statement claiming they had been pushed into the darkest corners of the world, too weak to be a threat. But whispers spread among wizards that they had merely relocated. Some said they were seen lurking in the dense fogs of abandoned moors. Others believed they had taken refuge in the ruins of cursed castles where no human dared to tread. The truth was, no one knew for sure. Dementors didn't need orders, alliances, or loyalty. They only needed suffering. With Azkaban no longer feeding them, they had to adapt. Some wizards feared they had started targeting muggles, preying on isolated villages where their presence would go unnoticed. Muggles, after all, couldn't summon Patronuses or fight back. Stories surfaced of entire towns where people fell into unexplained depression, where suicides increased, where an unshakable cold lingered in the air. The Ministry dismissed such claims as paranoia, but those who had encountered Dementors before knew the signs. A group of rogue wizards took it upon themselves to track them. These were not members of the Ministry, but individuals who had suffered at the hands of Dementors in the past. They followed the reports of unnatural despair, travelling to places where the air felt too heavy, where the light seemed too weak. In the Scottish Highlands they found traces, large patches of land where the grass had withered, where the air itself felt drained of warmth. No creatures lived there, not a single bird, not even insects. The closer they got, the harder it became to think clearly. Memories of their worst fears crept into their minds. Some turned back, others pushed forward. One night, a young wizard named Edgar Pierce stumbled upon something no one expected. A hidden valley cloaked in mist, where the air crackled with unnatural energy. At the center stood an ancient stone ruin, and inside, shadows moved unnaturally. He never made it out. The others found his wand lying on the ground outside the ruin. His body was never recovered. The Ministry refused to investigate, labeling his disappearance an unfortunate accident. But those who had seen the place knew better. Dementors were still out there. Their hunger only grew. Without restrictions, without orders, they were free to do as they pleased. While some of them hid in the wild, others sought new masters. Dark wizards had always been drawn to forbidden power, and a few tried to control them. In the depths of Nocturne Alley, whispers of new spells circulated, ways to summon Dementors, to bind them, to use them as weapons. The Ministry cracked down on these rumors, arresting anyone who dared seek such knowledge. But they couldn't erase the fact that Dementors had once been loyal to Voldemort, and if another dark force rose, they might pledge allegiance once again. Rumors spread of a secret gathering deep in the forests of Eastern Europe, where unspeakable experiments were conducted. The goal was to understand Dementors, to uncover their weaknesses, to find a way to truly destroy them. But the more they studied, the more dangerous the situation became. Those involved began suffering from nightmarish visions. Some lost the ability to feel joy entirely, their emotions drained even in the absence of Dementors themselves. One by one, they abandoned the project. The last remaining researcher, an elderly wizard named Orlan Drex, claimed he had discovered something before vanishing without a trace. His notes were later found in a burned-out cabin, the ink smeared, the pages covered in frost despite the summer heat. There was a theory, one so terrifying that even the most daring wizards refused to consider it. What if Dementors were not just creatures, but remnants of something far older? What if they weren't born but created? Some believed they were the byproduct of ancient dark magic, a force so vile that it refused to fade away. Others speculated that they had once been human, twisted by centuries of suffering until they lost everything but hunger. no one could say for sure. One thing was certain: Dementors had not been destroyed. They had simply withdrawn, waiting for the right moment to return.